Ever since Apple's M1 chip disrupted the laptop market, self-proclaimed M1 killers have been popping up all over the tech industry. But 2 years later, that couldn't be further from the truth. And the M1 killing idea is looking even more bleak for the future. And in this video, I'm gonna prove it to you. So let's get started. Back on November 10th of 2020, Apple unveiled the M1 chip, and back then there were a lot of doubters, but they all ended up being wrong because the M1 chip was absolutely amazing. And we know that for sure because as soon as they were released, Mac sales started skyrocketing in January of 2021, and then another year later, it was shown that 2021 Mac shipments grew twice as fast as overall PC shipments, but it doesn't stop there because in October of 2022, the PC market got absolutely slammed in the third quarter, but Apple instead saw massive Mac shipment growth. Just look at this chart right here where everybody is negative, but Apple is still positive 40.2% growth. And that's all because of Apple Silicon and of course the new M2 chip that we now have. And here is where Qualcomm enters the chat because they purchased a company named Nuvia, which was started by ex-Apple engineers, which actually worked on Apple Silicon. So supposedly they were gonna be able to make a chip that beats the Apple M1, the CEO said in July of 2021. And then again in November, they said it once again, saying that they're gonna beat Apple with better sustained performance and battery life. They wanted to be the industry leaders, which I personally was doubting. And then things started to look a little bit bleak because Qualcomm delayed those chips, saying that the first consumer Nuvia devices would only hit in late 2023, which is much later than their original estimate. And even on top of that, to add to the salt in the wounds, Qualcomm said that they will beat Apple's M2 chips. That was 2 days after WWDC when Apple revealed the M2 chip with the MacBook Air. The CEO said they would even beat the M2 chip with the help of former Apple engineers, but guess what ended up happening? We just got an update last month saying that Qualcomm's Apple M1/M2 rival is finally on the way, but Qualcomm's new chips won't be in devices until 2024. Yes, they delayed it again, and those Nuvia chips aren't coming into consumer PCs until 2024. I can't believe they delayed it once again. Now, the crazy thing is, Apple's M3 chip, yes, their M3 is gonna be launching late next year, late 2023, in devices already before the Nuvia chip that's supposed to come and beat the M1 and M2, which is only launching in 2024, which I see as an embarrassment because this M3 chip is gonna be on TSMC's 3nm chip process, and it is gonna be incredibly powerful, much more powerful than the M1 and the M2. And then here's where we get into an even bigger issue. What does beating the Apple M1 and M2 even mean? Does that mean benchmarks? Does that mean real-world performance? Because Qualcomm recently released their SQ3 chip in the Surface Pro 9. And let me remind you that this was once seen as a M1 MacBook Pro killer. Yes, people were speculating that the SQ3 would destroy the Apple M1 chip. But check this out, we just did a 2022 iPad Pro versus Surface Pro 9 comparison video, and the results are downright embarrassing. The first thing I want to point out is that the starting price for the Surface Pro 9 with the SQ3 chip is $1,300, the same as the iPad Pro M2 with the same RAM and storage configuration. And let me remind you that that's actually more expensive than the M2 MacBook Air. So yes, this is an expensive device, but let me show you the performance. As you can see in single core, the M2 chip absolutely destroys it. It's about 80% faster. But then if we go over to the multi-core, the M2 is 50% faster. So yes, it is a lot faster, but it might not seem like that big of a difference. But wait until I show you the real world performance differences. Check this out. I ran Speedometer 2.0, which is a web browsing benchmark, and it basically just shows you how snappy your device is for browsing the web and using web-based apps. Check this out. The M2 iPad Pro got 380 points or runs per minute, and the brand new SQ3 chip in the Surface Pro 9 only got 103. So the M2 is almost 4 times faster in real world web browsing performance. Not 50%, 4 times. And then going over to a real world 3D Mark Wildlife Extreme gaming benchmark, the graphics performance in the M2 is over 2 times faster. I don't know what Qualcomm has been doing for so many years working on this SQ3 because it is just not impressive. But wait until I show you Adobe Lightroom photo editing and how it performed. First of all, it was glitchy as heck in real world. Look how long it's taking to load these images up. But when I exported them, look at this difference. The Surface Pro 9 took over 6 times longer than the M2 to export 50 raw 42 megapixel photos. Over 6 times longer. And it's embarrassing because it's been 2 years since the M1 came out and the M2 isn't that much faster than the M1. Obviously, even the M1 would beat out the Surface Pro 9. And Microsoft even discontinued the Surface Pro X because the sales were just so bad and they gave you the choice of either Intel or the SQ3 chip, probably because they knew it is not a great chip, even compared to the previous generation. But the biggest issue is that the Surface Pro 9 with that chip is very expensive, $1,300. Now imagine how expensive that brand new Nuvia chip is gonna be because they've been working on that chip for years and they still have a couple more years to go. So they have to factor all of that R&D cost into the price of the Nuvia chip. So those chips are gonna be very expensive, and honestly, I doubt that they're gonna be able to beat the M3. But the even bigger problem with all of this is that even if Nuvia comes out with an absolutely killer chip that actually does beat the M3 chip, we still have the problem of Windows on ARM, which is what the Surface Pro 9 is running on. And the reason it's so slow is because Windows on ARM is not nearly as optimized as iOS and macOS is with these new Apple Silicon chips. So even if they match up in terms of benchmarks, which I don't think they will, I honestly don't believe that they'll get anywhere close in terms of real world performance in web browsing and actual productivity app workloads. And now pivoting over to a different side of the market, we actually have Intel, which is making some very interesting moves. They just announced that by 2030, they will be the #2 foundry in the world, and they're also embracing x86, ARM, and RISC-V. It's their multi-ISA strategy. So I personally believe that Intel is gonna be manufacturing Apple Silicon chips in the future, as well as all of the other chips. And I think they're specifically mentioning ARM and RISC-V because they know that the only way the PC market, specifically laptops, the only way they're gonna compete with Apple is if they switch over to these ARM and RISC-V based designs, because x86 simply uses too much power right now. Now, the worst thing for Intel is that they actually did have a chip that was supposed to beat the M1. It's in their roadmap, but they have unfortunately been delaying it because at first it was supposed to be ready to ship in the 4th quarter of 2023, which is when the M3 is supposed to come out, but they keep delaying it. Check this out. Intel postpones production of Meteor Lake's 3nm GPU tile at TSMC, which they were gonna use, but they delayed it. So now TSMC is forced to slow 3nm expansion because of the Intel delay. And then Intel ended up denying Meteor Lake being delayed to 2024, and they updated it, walking back part of their debunk. And check out what just happened last month. Intel has delayed Meteor Lake until 2024. So just like Nuvia and the other Apple M1 killers, they keep delaying their chips while Apple is smoothly sailing, going over to M3 on 3nm later next year. So the point of all of this is that I think all of these M1 killers are so behind that they're not gonna be able to catch up for years. And now finally it's starting to make sense why Apple is kind of taking it slow and why they're probably not gonna rush into 3nm next year with the M2 Pro and M2 Max. Now that really pains me to say that because everything should be set in stone for an early 2023 or at least spring 2023 release of 3nm chips. But because they're so far ahead and because everybody is delaying their chips, Apple can simply sit back, delay 3nm and be absolutely fine with these stopgap 5nm or even 4nm chips because everybody is so behind that Apple is still beating everybody else out in terms of performance and efficiency, especially in terms of battery life in their laptops. So with that said, I'm sorry M1 killers, but I think that you will never come out, at least for the next few years. We probably won't be seeing any M1 killers, and Apple is gonna stay on top of the laptop industry for years. Now, if you totally disagree with me, then let me know down in the comment section below. But if you're interested in buying one of the M1 or M2 MacBooks, you can check it out using the YouTube product tagging feature below. Click that circle above to subscribe. Check out one of those two videos right there. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.